Hello and welcome everybody to 498. This is LBST498. This is what we call the capstone to your liberal studies major. This is a very exciting course. It's a very exciting semester for most of you. This is the end of the road. This is where all of your hard work really culminates and you decide, you know what, this is it. We're ready to go, ready to enter the real world, or maybe you've been in the real world and this is where you can start taking some of those next steps that you've been working so hard to be able to take. Or maybe for some of you, this is just marking another stage of your intellectual development and you didn't necessarily have a professional goal in mind when you came here at Mercer. Whatever it is, this is a really important milestone for you as you make your way through Mercer, because this is where we ask you to really demonstrate and show us that you understand how to work within the disciplines that you've chosen for your concentrations and built your entire academic profile around. So let's talk a little bit about 498, what it is, what it looks like, and how are we actually going to make our way through this course. First thing to know is that we will be meeting once a month, and this meeting will take place typically the second Friday of each month, and the calendar on the syllabus will show you everything you need to know about when we're going to meet. We'll be meeting on Zoom. The meetings will take place from 6 to 9 Eastern time, and we will all gather together and share our current progress and talk about our current struggles and share in the journey, really quite literally together, to make sure that everybody who is struggling or everybody who is achieving shares in all of the things they're learning through each of these different experiences. 498 is also going to ask you to build an e-portfolio, and this is a place where you can really collect and synthesize all of the different work and thinking that you did throughout your time here at Mercer so that you can clearly demonstrate to others what a liberal studies degree means. Because, surprise, surprise, when you get out into the real world, people will wonder, what does liberal studies mean? What did you focus on? And people who know what liberal studies means will expect you to really dive deeply into what are your specific concentrations? What is it that you did while you were there majoring in liberal studies? And how do I know that your specific brand of liberal studies offers me the types of problem solving skills I need in my world? Let's talk first about who we are. We meaning me, Dr. Champion, and Dr. Fred Bongiovanni, the other facilitator of this course. Dr. Bongiovanni is a sociology and theology professor here in the College of Professional Advancement. He is also the chair of the Liberal Studies Department, and he studies all sorts of cool things that we're going to use as an example as we move forward through this introduction to share with you a little bit of discussion about what it means to be an interdisciplinary thinker. Dr. Bongiovanni studies all sorts of things from women in the ministry. He also talks about the idea of secularization theory. And so be sure to ask him what that means. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like and why sociology and religion pair nicely, or sociology and theology pair nicely to help answer those questions. Because if we're thinking, for instance, about something like women in ministry, what we want to understand is it's not just about the specific women, but it's about the culture surrounding women in ministry that creates this space for women to serve in those ministerial roles. And so if you're asking questions about the culture surrounding certain events, then you need to be trained in sociology to really understand those sort of ebbs and flows of cultural values and beliefs. More on that later. Me, I'm Dr. Jared Champion. I'm a professor of interdisciplinary studies and writing here in the College of Professional Advancement. This is my 5th year here at Mercer. Really enjoy it. And I study all sorts of things. I do have a little tiny smidgen of training. I have a minor in sociology from my undergraduate days, but I typically study broad sweeps of culture, and specifically I look at gender in contemporary America in popular culture. So things you would find on YouTube and television, those are what we would call popular television, because they're what the average, or popular culture, that's what the average populace would watch and consume. Whereas high culture would be things you have to go to a museum to see. That's not popular because it takes a lot more effort. We'll talk a little bit about what this means, but those two examples will serve, our two examples rather, will serve as a grounding source for examples as we talk to you about what it means to be interdisciplinary, which is ultimately what we need to be working on this semester as we work forward through 498, is to really understand what our specific interdisciplinary approach or lens gives us as a thinker and as a scholar to help us solve problems moving forward in the future. Now, let's talk a little bit about some basic terms of the course and some basic projects that we're going to be working on. But let me start first with something that's very, very, very important. Computer access. This may seem obvious to those of you that are in an online course, but you absolutely need computer access and you absolutely need reliable internet access. So, what that means is if you live in a place where your internet is unreliable, then what you want to do is immediately start finding a plan where you can be somewhere with really stable internet, because this is absolutely essential for your participation in the course. The other thing it means is if you don't have a computer, then it's either time to find a computer that you can use, or it's time to start looking at Mercer's resources. For example, the Mercer libraries will all check out a laptop for you for 3 days at a time, including all those different centers. So if you live near the Douglas Center, the Henry Center, Macon campus, or even the Atlanta campus, you can go to the library there and check out a laptop for free for 3 days at a time, and you can go use their computers in the library as well. But know this, you have to have reliable computer access and reliable internet access to be successful in this course. Please, please, please let us know if there's any way that we can help. But also, please do not attempt to take this course off a cell phone, for example. That just won't work, and it will end up in a lot of heartbreak come April. So please, please, please start focusing on computer access. The good news, though, is that Chromebooks work fine for all of the stuff we're going to do in this course. So if you need an inexpensive option, you can pick up $100 to $150 Chromebook from Target, and that will work sufficiently for what we're doing here. If you need reliable internet, please know that public libraries work really nicely for this. You can also go to the Mercer campuses and use their internet. So if you need to set aside time on Friday nights that once a month we'll be meeting in person, then please do so and go ahead and schedule that so you can make sure you're where you have reliable internet so that you can earn full credit for your time in this course. Now, what are we going to do? What's going to happen throughout the course of this course, of course, is first we're going to work on a major paper. The major paper is one that you and I will work on very closely. And this is going to be a space where you will be asked to create a research question that somebody in your specific disciplinary fields will ask. So, for example, if you were Dr. Bongiovanni, you might say, all right, I study theology and I study religion. And so what I want to know is, when did this certain belief become popular? So sociology would ask about the popularity of certain things. And then the religion would say, I can study the popularity of this religious movement, for example. So when did these two things become really popular, right? So for example, there's a thing called the, what's the name of that thing? So basically the idea here is that you could study things like, when did tattoos, for example, become accepted in the church, right? So when I was younger, tattoos were something where if you had tattoos, it would be seen as sort of taboo, especially if you had them showing in church. But now you go to churches, and a lot of the popular churches, and tattoos are everywhere, including ministers will have tattoos on their arms at some of these bigger churches. So then you could study, when did attitudes about tattoos change in church? It's not really a theological question, but that's a question that pairs both of those disciplinary perspectives together. And then you would start gathering information to study what changed, how did it change, where did it change, what was the first big sort of watershed moment for these things shifting. That's a really important way to kind of go about this. In your specific example, I want you to think of, what are your two disciplinary perspectives that you bring to bear on this? Or if you are someone who has one big concentration, start thinking about what somebody with that concentration might ask, and looking for questions that you can research and really figure out the answer to. The best part about this is that you will be asked to answer a question that's never been answered before. So your job is not to report back what people already know. Instead, the best major paper will ask a question that's not been asked before, and then actually be able to answer it by April. And so we will work together to craft those questions, but this is really a big piece of this. This course is to be able to actually put and apply the ideas and disciplinary perspectives that you developed over the course of the last 3 to 5, 6 years, however long you've been here at Mercer. We're asking you to apply those disciplinary perspectives and put them to work in a major paper to demonstrate that you understand what it means to use those disciplinary perspectives. Now, part of this display or demonstration of those will take place in an e-portfolio. The e-portfolio is an opportunity for you to really create and curate all of the hard work you've put together in an online platform, so you can show us where you learn the different skills along the way. The way to think about the e-portfolio is that this is your outward facing example of everything that you've done. And then it's also your roadmap for where you picked up different skills along the way. So I want you to think about this not just as a narrative of your time here at Mercer, but a narrative of your skills that you learned here at Mercer. So when you put different items into the e-portfolio, say you put a paper from LBST 275, and in that course, you really learn to think critically about the types of evidence you're using in your papers, then I want you to be able to articulate that so that whenever you start thinking about the future, can you tell people that you have a real strength in being able to assess the value of certain pieces of evidence? And you can see that this developed specifically in LBST 275. So the key here is the e-portfolio is where you're going to bring together all your work and then share with us what you learned through those specific assignments. The name of the game here is absolutely 100% specificity. The more specific you can be, the better off you are. So for example, if you put into the e-portfolio LBST 302, and you said, I learned to think critically in this class, well, that doesn't really tell us much because critical thought is so abstract. But if you tell us that you learn to assess the value of different pieces of evidence and its utility based on the qualities of that evidence, that's very specific. Helps us see this in a much more concrete light. So the name of the game throughout the course of the semester, you're going to hear it from me a million times over: specificity, and specifically with the e-portfolio, be thinking specifically about the skills you learned along the way. Now, we will be holding monthly class meetings. And these, again, we talked a little bit about these. They'll be from 6 to 9 on the second Friday of the month. Make sure you check that calendar on the syllabus because I think there's one that might be off by a couple of days. But just know that this is a really important time for us to come together, and we're going to share the different places where we're learning things and places where we're struggling. Chances are good if you're learning something new, the entire class can benefit from finding out what you're learning. And chances are equally good that if you're struggling on something, that other people in the class will be struggling with a similar thing too. So by bringing all of those different pieces to bear on the conversations we'll have in these meetings, you will have a great opportunity to learn some and to contribute to this academic community and intellectual conversation that we're starting today. So we have our first one coming up this Friday. So be ready for that. I'm looking forward to seeing you all there. And Dr. Bongiovanni will be there. We invite in all of the faculty from the Liberal Studies program, and we typically have a pretty good turnout. And this is where we'll find out this Friday who you are, what you value, what you care about, what you're planning to study, and what your career aspirations are, if any at all, or what your hope is for the future moving forward by way of what's your educational sort of roadmap. What is it you're hoping? What's your educational bucket list even? Are there certain goals you hope to meet, certain things you hope to learn? This is where we're going to talk about all those. And we'll start setting the foundation and the groundwork for the other assignments like the major paper, the e-portfolio, and they're absolutely essential. So be sure you pay close attention there too to the idea of class participation. So your attendance is invaluable. It's absolutely necessary, but attendance is more than just signing on to Canvas or to Zoom rather. Your participation is absolutely essential because we need all of your voices. We need all of your ideas to move this thing forward. One of the biggest differences in a liberal studies degree and other degrees is that we really, really try hard to value the idea of a problem posing method of education rather than a banking model. The banking model is that I'm smarter than you as your professor, and I'm going to fill your brain up with all the things I know, but you're never going to be quite as smart as me because you can't contain all the knowledge I know because I'm already ahead of you. Right? That's not a great model, and it's not accurate to who we are. Many of you have a lot of skills and abilities that I won't know, and I won't be able to make good use of. So when we think about this sort of model, what it calls for is what we call a problem posing model. And our problem for the semester is, how do we really demonstrate that we know what our concentrations are? And so what we do in this model is your professors will present you with this problem. And the problem is, how do you demonstrate what you know and what you know how to do and what kind of problems you can solve? And then your job is to figure out how you demonstrate this, and our job is to help guide you. The whole idea of this is that if we get you into this thought process where you recognize that your job is not to have your brain filled with a bunch of facts, instead your job is to start exercising your problem solving muscles. What that means is we can help you really develop into a lifetime learner where even outside of the classroom, you can still start solving problems for the world world and making the world a better place. So that's a fancy way of saying you're expected to participate in class beyond just saying something is cool. We want you to be asking good questions. We want you to be making really thoughtful comments. And not just do we want it, but my favorite part is when we get a lot of investment in a class or a really good discussion, it makes those hours we spend together really fly by, and it really sends all of our brains into new places and helps us all move in a new intellectual direction that's really so much more fun than sitting and having our brains filled by some old dude with a beard sitting in a fancy library, right? Now, one of the other things that makes this class unique is that we'll be holding monthly conferences. The monthly conferences are typically held with me and you, and they're about 20 to 30 minutes. And what we'll do is we'll meet and talk about your paper project. Generally speaking, these will take place 2 weeks after we meet as a class or 2 weeks before we meet as a class, generally speaking. And we will meet together and talk about where you are in your paper project. What does it look like? What kinds of things are you struggling with? What kinds of things are you finding that you're getting better at? Where are your strengths starting to develop? These are opportunities for us to have a one-on-one conversation, or one-on-two if Dr. Von Giovanni attends those meetings, which he may be there for some or all or none of them. But these are an opportunity for us to really hash out where you're going and create a game plan that is tailored specifically to where you are academically and intellectually at this part of the process. These are invaluable times for us, and they're also really helpful for us in a less formal sense, that when you get ready to start moving forward, if you need, say, a letter of recommendation for graduate school, these are the places where I'm likely to pull the most information to be able to say, I worked with this student in 498, and here's what I saw them do, and here's where I saw them grow. These are really, really important. Those are really important moments for us. Now, this is all super, it's super helpful to think about these monthly conferences as a place where we can start really developing what you're working on at present. And I want you to think about that a little bit, that's really important when I say that at that point that we meet, that you are fully caught up on your work. Because if we're talking about sort of the basics of how to do an assignment, that's a very different conversation than I did the assignment, now how do I make it better? So I want to encourage you to use these as a place to really grow and really build up exactly what you're doing intellectually in the paper by being as prepared as possible. Come to those conferences with questions. Be thinking about your thought process. Where are the places where you see things really coming together nicely? Where are the struggles? Where are the places that you're finding some challenges? Let's talk a little bit about this idea of earning credit. Now, earning credit is it's not super difficult, but it does require a lot of effort. So for example, if you show up to the class meeting and you sit silently on Zoom, that's not going to fly. The other thing to know here is that you need to, the reason that we talked about that reliable internet is that you need to be able to engage and hear everything. So for this, you want to make sure that you're in a place where you can hear us, where you can talk. So for a lot of these, it's not okay to be driving, for example. So we've had people who have tried to take the course and drive while they're in class. That's not acceptable, and you can't earn credit that way. What is acceptable is if you're in a quiet place with reliable internet on a computer so that you can share your screen so we can talk over those ideas. So be sure that you are present for that. I'd also encourage everybody to take a close look at the attendance policy. And this is where you're going to see that attendance is absolutely crucial, that the Friday meetings are not negotiable. You need to be present for each and every one of those. So take a really close look at that attendance policy. And remember that attendance is more than just turning on Zoom. It's actually participating and really moving that conversation forward. And I know it sounds like I'm being sort of stern, but what I want to really harp on here is that this class is so much fun when everybody participates. Legitimately, the most fun class I've ever taught when everybody is really engaged. So I'm going to encourage you all to play your part and really pull your weight in the class by being as engaged as possible. One, so you're in attendance, that's the baseline, but let's think about this as like a scholar. So a student thinks, how do I earn attendance? A scholar thinks, how do I make this space better? As a scholar, the way you make it better is by being ready for class, being signed on in a place where you can hear everything, where you can see us, and then also engaging throughout the course of the meeting so that we know that you are moving that conversation forward. It changes the dynamic of everything. And I'm hopeful and optimistic, knowing the folks that I know who are in this space. I think it's going to be a great semester. Let's talk a little bit about office hours. So we're having those monthly conferences, but that's not the only time we can meet. In fact, we have office hours. Both Dr. Bongiovanni and I have office hours, and you can check the syllabus for Dr. Bongiovanni's hours. My hours are listed there as well. These are times where you can either stop by our office. You can also send us an email, and we can coordinate a Zoom meetup at that time. Other thing to know is that if our office hours don't work for you, know that you can also schedule other appointments. Those are just times that we have carved out specifically for you as our top priority. So let us know if you need to meet, and have us meet with you often and early. So don't be hesitant to start meeting with us, right? The whole idea here is that we want to know you. We want to know what you value. We want to know where your strengths are. We want to know what you think about things. We want to know what your future goals are. We want to know where you found really valuable experiences in the past. These are invaluable to us as a community because it helps us tailor everything moving forward. Speaking of moving forward, what's next for you? So what's next is start by working your way through that module for week 1. Start looking at the reflection and start crafting those and putting them up onto the Canvas page, and then also start working on that first paper progress assignment. Paper progress assignments will be every other week, and they will scaffold the process of writing your paper, which will really help us to avoid any instances where at the end of the semester, you end up having to pull an all-nighter. Those always lead to poor papers. Instead, what we want to do is put our best foot forward, and the best way to do this is by scaffolding our work. And scaffolding is a fancy way of saying doing it in steps throughout the course of the next 4 months. So start working on that as well. We'll have a meeting on Friday. We'll meet and talk about everything we've been talking about here and really work forward on setting ourselves up for the entire semester, and start taking a look over the syllabus. Make sure you really understand all of the different policies that are in place and all the resources that are available to you. I know the syllabus seems like a weird thing for me to say, all right, you're in 498. You've probably seen a syllabus 1,000 times over. Go read it anyway. But I promise you, knowing what's in the syllabus will be invaluable to you and your success here. So make sure you take a look over that, read it over, specifically because there are new resources listed there that we haven't had in the past that can really help set you up for success moving forward, which is ultimately what we all want here. Also, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Let us know who you are. Let us become keenly aware of your values, and really let us know how we can help support you moving forward. So if there are things you've struggled with in the past, let us know, and then we can start creating some systems to make sure that you are in a position to be successful, which again is what we all want. That basically covers it from here. Again, I'm Dr. Champion. Really excited to be working with you all. We'll be looking forward to a great semester. We're going to talk a lot on Friday about what interdisciplinary studies means. We're going to talk a lot about how you start crafting a good question. And then we're going to start talking a lot about what an academic community looks like and what an academic conversation sounds like, and how you can start putting your voice into one of those conversations right away. Looking forward to working with you this semester, everybody. Take care, keep working hard, and I'm looking forward to a great semester. See y'all.